Hey everybody, this is my 125 and we are going to do a water change tonight, and we're going to wipe the glass down and move some of those water sprite plants out of there. This is going to be really impromptu. I just kind of got bored, there's nothing on TV, and I just decided what the hell, might as well go do some work on this tank. The thing that's bugging me is the growth on the front glass. I know you can't really notice it, but it's there. And it's that sort of brown diatom algae that you see very commonly in newer tanks, and this tank is still fairly new. It's about 3 months old now, and in my experience it takes, at least a good 3 or 4 months for a tank to really start settling in and balancing in. And I've never dealt with a tank this large or with this small of a bioload comparable to the amount of water. So this whole tank is sort of a new experience for me, and so we'll have to wait and see how long it takes for this particular tank to balance out. But I am still getting a lot of that brown diatom algae that I always associate with a newer tank setup. So nothing real, specific or particular that we're doing tonight, just draining some water out of it. I'm going to wipe the glass down while the water's low. I'm going to remove a fair amount of this water sprite in there. It just grows like crazy, and it is basically just blocking a little too much of the light, just a little too much of it in there. I am going to keep a fairly large amount of it against this piece of wood here. I really like the way that looks. I was going to try to get some Java fern growing on. I'm sorry about the reflection from the tanks behind us there. That's again a very impromptu video. That's what you get. But I was going to try to attach some Java fern to the top of that piece of wood. I don't like the way it's cut off in such an abrupt, unnatural looking way, and then that water sprite actually hides that very well. It looks really nice, and the current in the tank tends to push the water sprite to the left there, and you can see as those new fronds grow out, they grow up and then they flow with the water, and the roots flow in the current and everything. So it looks really nice, and that piece is going to stay there for the most part. It's this stuff down here that's just a big floating mass of it that's going to get thinned out a little bit, and some of that's going to get removed. Other than that, I may get in there and remove some of those cuttings there, or those shoots that are growing up off of that sword on the bottom. They need to come out, and they're eventually going to end up in my angelfish tank. So that might happen tonight while I'm in there. Might not, I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of doing this just to kill time. Sort of needs to be done. So as we progress, I'll check my nutrient levels. I'll look at my nitrates and my phosphates and so on, and see what we got going on in the tank. If there's anything to be alarmed about, etc., I will include that in the video. Otherwise, I'm just going to make this a pretty basic video. So sit tight and let's see where we go from here. Alright everybody, while we're waiting for the tank to drain a little more, let's talk about some water testing. And as you can see, I've already cut that sword cuttings out, and they had rooted in a little further than I thought. I actually had to pull that up out of the substrate once I had cut the main trunk. I didn't realize they had actually gotten their roots down into the substrate, so it was about time I got them out of there. I'm going to clean that up a little bit and trim those roots back, and then those are going to end up in my angelfish tank at some point. So anybody that keeps up with my videos in any way knows I'm pretty keen on water testing. So what do I test when I do my water changes when I'm not shooting video? Because this is kind of what this video is. It's very impromptu. I just got bored and decided to do this, so this is what I do, and I'm just going to film it. The only reason I'm really honestly testing anything in this tank is because I said it's a fairly new tank, and I'm still just trying to get a handle on how long it takes things to change, and does things shift over a period of a week or 10 days, how fast do the nitrates accumulate, so on and so forth. So it's been, I don't know, a couple weeks since I've done a major water change on it, and I know it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell even standing here in person, but that nitrate test on the right there still has a brownish tint to it. So I'm under 40 parts per million. I'm maybe at 30 parts per million on nitrates in that tank, and that's fine. My pH is rock solid stable, right where I always expect to see it, at 7.3. I have very, very stable water. I do a lot to it to make it that way, and it pays off. I have very, very stable water. I'm very happy to see that again. This stuff right here I use for filter material. We're going to see a little bit of that in just a moment, and we're going to go in and do a little bit of work on the glass, and I'll try to get a little bit of filming of that as well, and then that'll be about it. We'll fill the tank back up and do the after. Alright, well, we got the tank draining. You can kind of see how funky the glass looks there a little bit. As I said, we were going to see a little bit of this stuff in just a minute. I like to wipe my glass down with this, unless you've got the green spot algae, which is just tough as nails, and you really need a good solid scraper to get that off, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. I like to use this rather than scraping it. When you scrape it, you're just knocking it loose into the water column, and wherever it lands, it's going to start growing again. You can only suck so much of it out while you're doing a vac. So when you use this, as we're going to try to attempt to do here, one-handed, I should be able to just wipe anywhere, and we should see what I'm talking about. You can see how it's already picking up the brown diatom algae that I was talking about. Again, it's not bad, but as I wipe, you see it collecting in there. And that's just the thing. I can do this, and I've now pulled that out of the tank rather than just having it go right into the tank. Now, of course, that's not all of it. I am still knocking plenty of it loose, and plenty of it is going in the tank, but as you can see, plenty of it is coming out of the tank as well. And this stuff is dirt cheap. I use several pieces. I don't just keep using the same piece over and over again. I would do more than I just did normally with that, but this is for demonstration purposes. I can only do so much with one hand and the camera, and in just a second I will show you what I use for a scraper, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, now for scrapers, what I use is very, very simple. It is a razor blade. If you're old enough, you will probably call this a Gillette Blue Blade like I do. But it's just a straight edge razor blade. I just cut a notch in a piece of wooden dowel. Again, doesn't have to be square. I just happen to have a square piece lying around, and that's all it is. It's as simple as that is. I do want to make clear, I've discussed this with people before. I've heard this go around and around. You cannot scratch glass with the razor blade, people. You just cannot do it. The metal is not hard enough. The hardest razor blade is still not hard enough to scratch the softest glass. What happens is, and this is exactly what I use this for, we'll come down here where it's a little lighter, and I'll try to get this on video too. I've already done this, but I'll try to show you what I use this for. Everybody knows you get that sort of line at the bottom where it gets all gunky and nasty and dark and you can't really get it off. That's what I use this for. I sort of get down in there and I crunch down. But that is exactly why you have to be careful. What scratches the glass is the substrate. It's not the razor blade itself. It is absolutely impossible. I can't stress that enough. You cannot scratch glass with the razor blade itself. You get little pieces of the substrate which can very easily scratch the glass, and you might get a piece in there so small you can't even see it. So you've got to be really careful, especially when you're right down there, you know, and you're crunching down and doing that up and down in the edge of that substrate. It's very easy to scoop a little bit of that substrate and drag it up the glass and give you a scratch. If you're using any kind of pad like we were just looking at, or if you're using one of the scrubbers that has sort of the you know, the textured material, be careful. If you get little pieces of substrate caught in that, silicate sand, just about any kind of substrate really will scratch your glass. So that's where those little tiny scratches mysteriously pop up from. It's not from any kind of metal scraper or anything. It's from your actual substrate getting caught in there. So really that's about all I wanted to show you. We are going to just get on with draining it a little bit. I'll finish wiping down the glass. We're going to throw away some of those plants. There's no point in showing you that really. So after this we will just show you the after. And once again, I leave the cabinet door open whenever I've got the filter and the heater unplugged, and that way I will not forget to plug them back in. So sit tight, give me a little bit, and we will look at the after. Alright everybody, I just started refilling the tank. I just wanted to show you what I do when I drain the tank for a major water change. I can go a little lower than this, I do occasionally, but that's plenty low enough. I didn't really need to do a water change in terms of nitrates or anything like that. I was only really doing the water change just to get the glass cleaned, and my philosophy generally is if I'm going to do a water change I may as well just go ahead and do a big one. It gets those tannins out of the water, which don't affect my pH very much. Again, I have very stable water. I've done a video about tannins. I can attach a card. The tannins don't have a huge impact on your pH if you've got some buffering capacity to your tank, and I do. So the tannins building up don't really affect my pH very much, but they do cloud the water, you know, or they stain it up, and it reduces the amount of light that gets in there, and it just makes the tank look a little dimmer. And while I appreciate that and I enjoy it, I actually like a black water tank, but I also like seeing my fish. So as I always say, you know, it's a cycle. I'll go ahead and I'll get it nice and fresh and clean. As you'll see in a few moments here in the after, it'll be nice and brightly lit, and everything is going to glow and look beautiful. And within a few weeks time, the water will be nice and tea stained again. The water sprite will be growing back in, and we'll start all over. I do want to mention that I don't recommend doing water changes of this size if you're not really sure about your water. I've mentioned before that I do a lot to my water. I really understand what's going on with it. It's very stable. You can really radically shift your pH. You can shift your carbonate hardness. There's a lot of things that can happen in your tank that can really throw it out of whack, and you can even knock your nitrogen cycle out of whack if you don't really know what you're doing. And a massive water change can actually kill your fish if you shift your water too quickly and you don't really know what's going on with it. So stick to the 10% and the 25%, you know, weekly and monthly respectively, and then I think you'll be okay. If you do know your water and you really got, you know, a handle on how stable it is and what's going on, or if you're in an emergency situation where you know something's happened and you really need to get some bad water out of there fast, then obviously go ahead and do that. But typically I don't recommend doing these really big water changes like this. Again, just because you see me doing it doesn't mean it's the way to do it. It's just the way I do it. So let me get back to filling this up, and then we'll cut back to a before scene, and we'll then do the before and after at the very end, and we'll close up with any final thoughts. Alright everybody, there's your after. So I did do a couple of more things other than just wipe down the glass on this water change. No big deal. But while I was still draining the tank and I was still able to pull some of the debris out, I did get in there with one of my medium bristle brushes and did a little bit of scrubbing on this rock. If you look closely right there, you can actually still see the bristle marks. It was just getting a little too overgrown for me. That is a rock I brought in from the outdoors, and I cleaned it fairly thoroughly, but I obviously did not get all of the growth that was on it off, and it was growing back in a little faster than the rest of this tank is sort of developing what I think of as the patina of the tank. I like my tanks to look very natural. I like some of that growth in there, but it has to stay within reason. This piece of wood also looks really good. It's getting that nice green growth on there. I don't know whether that is a species of algae or if it is a species of cyanobacteria, but whatever it is, it's not harming the tank, and it is all part of the growth and the patina that develops in a tank. I also got in there and removed the runners that were developing on the sword here. We already saw those. That's what the sword looks like now that it doesn't have those on there anymore. Looks a lot better, I think. And then, of course, I wiped down the glass, and I wiped these rocks down with the brush ever so gently. There was not a whole lot on the rocks down at this end of the tank. These were long established rocks that I've had for quite a while. The only rock that I've added to this aquarium that was new was the one we just looked at, and that's why it had that additional growth on there. So that's about it. There was your before and after. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you picked up something. Hope a little tip in there somewhere. I do a lot of these off-the-cuff type videos, so if you're not already subscribed, go ahead and do so. You don't want to miss any of them. And thank you for watching this one. I'll see you real soon on the next one.